Hi, this is Heather Derome from heatherderome.com and from the Sonatas and Partitas.com. This video is an inaugural video in a new series that I'm calling The Arranger's Corner. For this first video, I decided to focus on the Andante from the A minor sonata, the Andante in C major. This one. So on. And so when Frank Koonce and I are making our arrangements, we always like to read and seek out what violinists had to say about the pieces. And here's what Jaap Schroeder says about this Andante. He writes, "One of the most remarkable movements in the Baroque literature for unaccompanied violin, this Andante is an aria accompanied by a bass line with steadily repeated eighth notes." Now, honestly, when I read that, I was a little taken aback. I mean, that he's saying that it's one of the most remarkable movements in the Baroque literature for unaccompanied violin. I mean, I kind of thought, well, what about the chaconne? And what about the three fugues from the Sonatas and Partitas? Or the E major prelude? This, I mean, it's beautiful. It's a wonderful piece, but I didn't think it would pass as one of the most remarkable movements in all of that literature. But what I realized later is that it didn't seem all that remarkable to me, because playing an aria with accompaniment, I mean, that's just what guitarists do all the time. They play melody and accompaniment. But the violinists, they mostly just play melody. Now, while on the surface, this Andante seems like a pretty simple piece to arrange, and it is. This piece actually provided us with one of our most difficult mysteries to solve. It actually took us close to 10 years to figure it out. And let's backtrack a little bit. So when we're making an arrangement, what's the first thing we do? Like, this is not a trick question. The first thing we do is we copy out the score. This simple question, simple answer. But the fact is that act of copying out a score, that was a very big part of Bach's musical education. And that's what they did back then to learn. They copied out each other's scores. And I often wondered, how could that teach you that much to make people into such great composers? And I got part of my answer doing this work with Frank, because he was the one doing the copying out. And occasionally he would send me these amazing questions that he would run into just from that act. And now one night I got this email from him. He wrote, "One thing that has me really perplexed is the inconsistency in note beaming. Look at the Andante of the violin score of BWV 1003. The first measure has all 6 notes of the lower voice beamed together. The second measure has 2 plus 4, and the third measure has 2 plus 2 plus 2. I can't figure this out. Maybe this has been discussed somewhere by some musicologist, but I can't find any commentary on Baroque note beaming anywhere on the internet, and it's driving me crazy. Any thoughts?" Well, it drove us both crazy for a long time. I spent several nights up trying to figure it out. And one night I finally got this eureka, and I realized that, first of all, when the chords change, the beams break. And then second, when you see he's got this tied note over the second beat, the chord doesn't change, but the beam breaks there. And the other thing is that sometimes instead of a tied note, Bach has a rest in the top voice, and then there's a new phrase that starts. And again, the beams break there every time. So after I saw that, I thought, I'm going to try to predict when the beams are going to break. So I covered them up. And I predicted every single one, except in measure 5. And so I thought, maybe there's a mistake in my score. And I went and looked at Bach's, and I noticed that he has a tiny little strike on the beam there. And I wonder, is that a slip of a pen, or did he mean that? So I went to look at Anna Magdalena's score, and hers is definitely split there. So I was very excited about this, and I emailed Frank back, and he wasn't convinced. And I mean, he had a point, because why would Bach do this here and nowhere else? It just seemed like such a finicky, nitpicky thing to be doing for such a simple little song. So we decided to just, whenever we could, we would ask a violinist. Every time a well-known violinist came to one of our respective cities, we would either find a way to corner them and ask them our question. And I asked all my colleagues, I asked all the teachers I knew, the students I knew. And the thing is, every single one of them, whether they were students or like internationally known performers, they all gave us the same answer. And they all said, I never noticed. And that's when I realized that actually this act of copying out music and making arrangements, it brings you closer to the music in a different way than just learning a score. Now, towards the end of our work together, when we were ready to publish the book, there was still this mystery, and we were writing the critical notes, and I just thought, oh, we can't leave this hanging. So I wrote to Colin Booth, who wrote, Did Bach really mean that? Now, Colin admitted to not really having any leads, but he asked, well, do you think it has to do with connection? And then I started to write back, oh, no, it couldn't be that, because Bach uses the slurs for that. But then I thought, oh, I better go check. So I went to look, and I saw that this piece essentially has no slurs. Now, when Frank and I first started working together, we wondered if we should include all the violin slurs in our edition. There was a lot of division of opinion. I don't know if there still is, but there was. And a lot of people thought, well, no, these slurs are they're just markings. They're like right hand markings. They tell you when to go up and when to go down with your bow. And other people very convincingly spoke about the slurs as like articulation marks. They were like Bach's blueprint on how to articulate his music, how to make gestures, how to phrase it. And so we decided to include the slurs. But here was a piece with no slurs. And so it just seems so obvious now that because there were no slurs, instead, Bach has used the beaming to show us how to articulate his music. I mean, it's kind of a shame that Bach's stroke of genius is pretty much lost on a whole generation of players. But I wanted to see what else Jaap Schroeder had to say once I had seen that. So he goes on to say after that, in these pieces, the expressive solo part unfolds over a simple walking bass whose punctuating rhythm provides the background. One thinks of a singer and his lute, or his guitar, except that here a violin represents both the vocalist and the accompanist. The upper voice must sing, and the lower part must strike a precise and regular beat like the thumb of a lute player. So that's what's so remarkable about this piece, and what is so normal for guitarists. And later on he goes on to say, when we play separate 16th notes in the soprano voice, the bass notes turn out to all be down bows, just like the movement of the thumb of the lutenist. So think of it. I mean, this is why Bach didn't include any slurs in this piece. It makes it so that all the bass notes have down bows, so that it can imitate the movement of the thumb. And that brings us full circle to what I was saying at the beginning of how this is not at all of an unusual guitar piece. It lends itself very well to the guitar. Well, it's because the violinist is imitating the guitar. And so when we're transcribing this piece, we're imitating a violinist that's imitating a guitarist. And so I wanted to, as I said, I wanted to use this piece as the inaugural piece for the Arranger's Corner, not only because it's such a good guitar piece and it's actually relatively easy to transcribe, but also because it shows us how that very first step in the transcription process, just like that simple act of transcribing the music, can take us down these unexpected alleyways of learning and discovery. And then after that, every step on the way is just rife with learning opportunities. So I hope you found this helpful. As always, let us know what you think at sonatasandpartitas.com. If you'd like to find out when new videos are uploaded, you can turn on the subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. The future videos about the Arranger's Corner are going to deal with subjects like adding in bass notes and how to choose the right one, or the occasional time when you might want to take out a note. I mean, there are just so many avenues to explore in this topic.